This is Power Play. Let's go get the players. Up first, opposition reaction to the government's plan to help Canadians and contain the COVID-19 outbreak. John Brassard is a Conservative MP and the party's deputy whip. Peter Julian is NDP House Leader, coming to us from New Westminster, British Columbia. Gentlemen, nice to have you there. And thank you for doing this. Two people, again, on Skype or FaceTime. This is our new reality. So the House is being recalled to pass legislation tied to the aid package. Now, how will that look for each of your respective parties? Like, I'm wondering how this is going to work. Mr. Brassard, I'll start with you. How will this work? Will you be coming back to Parliament?
Well, the details are still to be worked out. I know that the government House leaders have been working on this for the last couple of days. The expectation, rightly, is that it's going to be a scaled-down Parliament. The other expectation is that it'll be mostly members of Parliament who are within driving distance. Obviously, we want to keep members of Parliament off of airplanes where they can become carriers or be exposed to the potential of COVID-19. We're not sure exactly, it hasn't been announced yet exactly when Parliament will be recalled, but the expectation is that it'll be at some point early next week. As for myself, I was recently on an airplane, and so I'm, like I've been advised to, self-isolating, so it won't be me coming to Ottawa, but I'm sure many of my colleagues within Ontario and Quebec within driving distance will be there.
I'm wondering about you, Peter Julian. I mean, you're all the way in British Columbia. Are you even considering getting on a plane and coming here?
No, I'm not, because that would contradict why we rose last Friday. The intent is to not have members of Parliament as carriers. And for me to go across the country, 5,000 kilometers to Ottawa and come back, there is always that possibility that I could become a carrier. So I'm staying put in British Columbia. We will be having people who are in the Ottawa area, including our leader, Jagmeet Singh, participating once we know what details are of the legislation. We've said, Jagmeet Singh has said this publicly, we support the measures. We believe the government should be moving as quickly as possible to make sure that these financial resources get in the hands of Canadians. And so we have already said we support the measures, and we want the government to be working already, not waiting for the legislative stamp of approval next week, but already working on putting it in place. There are a lot of details that need to be worked out, and our primary concern is making sure Canadians are taken care of. And to date, we've raised some questions. There haven't been answers yet. Obviously, the government has some things to work through. We want them to start now, and we'll be giving that legislative support next week.
John Brassard, we heard from your leader, Andrew Scheer, yesterday, who said, look, we're prepared to collaborate, that we all have to collaborate. This money has to get to Canadians as fast as possible. I'm wondering, we know that the business community was somewhat consulted. Were you consulted? Was your party consulted before the finance minister made these proposals?
Well, I know, Joyce, that our shadow ministers have been talking to their counterparts and relaying the information that they're hearing from their constituents, including the business community. So the government, I suspect, was fully aware of what we were hearing, not just from a health standpoint, but from a business standpoint. And I think the most important thing here, and I agree with Peter, is that we get Parliament back and that we work collaboratively to make sure that this package gets approved as soon as possible. We do have questions, obviously, of the government on this. Most importantly, how fast is the money going to flow? Because there's a lot of anxiety right now among Canadians and business owners, the expectation of when they can see this money. And so just earlier today, I was on a conference call with the Barrie Chamber of Commerce here locally. There were more than 100 business owners, and all of them had questions because they're concerned. And I think, you know, the reality of the situation, the magnitude of this package, and the fact that the bureaucracy is effectively working out of their house right now, We have to temper expectations that this money, even though the finance minister said today that it may be out the door in 2 to 3 weeks, there has to be a tempered expectation that it may take a little bit longer, just given the magnitude of the situation that we're facing. But the most important thing is that Parliament get back, approve these measures. The opposition will have the ability to ask questions of the government, which I expect Peter and his party and others will do. But we have to get back quickly and make sure that we're working on behalf of Canadians.
Peter, Julian, is there enough in there? Because it is a very complicated package for Canadians to navigate. Which of these plans or which am I eligible for? We've heard a lot of those questions. It's going to be complicated. We know a lot of the civil servants aren't working. Are you confident that Canadians will get the money they need at the end of the day?
Well, that's certainly what we'll be pushing for. Many of the measures that were announced on Wednesday were measures that the NDP has been pushing for a number of weeks. Jagmeet Singh talked about ensuring that all workers had supports in place, whether they're having to take leave because they're sick themselves or taking care of a loved one, or because they've lost their job due to the economic shutdowns that we're seeing. That's certainly in the package, but we are pushing for more details and to make sure that that money actually is released. So we've also called for a delay on Canada's student loans and a delay on filing tax returns. Fortunately, those things have been announced by the government. And there's some other measures that we think the government should be taking as well. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, and that's a concern of ours. In the finance ministry briefing yesterday, a number of NDP MPs raised that concern about the lack of infrastructure to actually deliver the funding that Canadians need. And so we're going to continue to push on that. And I believe Jagmeet Singh has written to the Prime Minister today on that very matter, making sure that in place there is an infrastructure so that those resources are delivered to Canadians. You can make a great announcement, but if the money actually doesn't flow to Canadians, then it's a bit of an empty commitment. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure is put into place so that that money can be delivered to Canadians so that they can pay their rent, they can feed their family, and regardless of the infrastructure, the economic turbulence that we're experiencing, Canadians can feel that they're protected from a financial standpoint, if not protected from a health standpoint, because that, of course, is a concern to all of us. So we need to make sure we're taking care of the economic uncertainty, at least for that, while we weather this storm, which is the coronavirus.
John Brassard and Peter Julian, thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. And we will be following that story and the return of Parliament next week. Thanks for being there.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.